Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, excited to tell you that the Coda second edition is now back out in the market. Kindle edition is $2.99. If you ever wanted to understand the weaponization of DNA, your 23andMe, what can be done with it, will shock you and amaze you. This story of biblical impact about Satan's plan to wipe out the line of Aaron so that Jesus never returns. Right now, $2.99 on Kindle. Also, my newest book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. Go to ignitinganation.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page, click on the book cover, give us your email address, and we'll give you the first chapter for free. I'm delighted to introduce you today to Diogo Esteves, author of the great new book, just out in the market, just available now to pre-order, The Journey of a Kingsman and the Quest to Become the Person You Were Created to Be. Diogo, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Am I saying that correctly? Because in Portuguese, it's different than Espanol, so is it Diogo?
It's Giogo in Portuguese, but it's Diogo in the US.
So the D would be a G in Portuguese.
Exactly, Giogo.
Diogo. So,
Yes.
but you go by Diogo.
Diogo's good.
Okay. All right. So you can tell that neither Spanish or Portuguese, although I think the first 5 or 6 words of the Lord's Prayer in Spanish, but only enough to start it, and they say, that's wonderful, and then but I can't finish it. So kind of take us on a little journey back to you were raised in Brazil and moved to the United States at age 17. Tell us about Brazil. I think America is clearly unaware. The only thing we know is Rio. The only thing we know are the big festivals, the dancing, the lights, the bright lights, the cross on the mountaintop. But I think that Americans are primarily not so familiar with Brazil.
Yeah, funny story actually. When I first moved to Brazil with my parents, I was 14 years old. So I moved to the US at 17 by myself to actually start working. But funny story, when I was 14, I was at school, going to school, middle school in Miami. And some of my friends actually thought that Brazil was still a jungle. So they were wondering how is it that I could speak and do the things that I did, because in their mind, everything down there was just a jungle. So that was pretty interesting. But Brazil's a beautiful place. There's no doubt about that. But there's a lot of things going on down there that are making a lot of Brazilians want to leave that beautiful country of ours and come to the U.S. and just find some peace, for once in their lives.
Now, this journey back and forth between Brazil and the United States, is Brazil, like many of the South American and Central American countries, more Catholic in the denominational realm of Christianity?
Yes, I believe so. It was colonized by, it is the only country in South America that was colonized by Portuguese, not Spanish. Everything else was colonized by the Spanish. So obviously the beliefs and everything else came with it as well. So I would say the majority is Catholic, although I don't have the stats or anything like that. I've been in this country for the last, I would say, 15 years. So my adult life has been here.
Right. So, but our adult life is often shaped by the impressions of our youth. And so from a faith perspective, where were you in your youth? What were you exposed to? What kind of role models did you have that helped shape who you are or who you are becoming?
So my father first came to Christ when I was 8 years old. So we pretty much grew up inside the church, and we were there in this particular church until about we were 14 years old. That's the reason why we moved to the U.S. the very first time. So most of my upbringing has been within the Christianity realm. Some of the beliefs that I developed along the way were actually were because of that, that exposure. But everything, as you obviously have seen in the book, has changed in the last couple of years, just because my perspective of how I saw God was completely twisted back then.
Well, you're currently the president and founder of the Kingsman Academy, which is designed to equip now both men and women
That's right.
in the 12 essential elements of life, helping them to find their God-given calling. Before that, you built a multi-million-dollar business in investments, insurance, and real estate, most before the age of 30.
29.
29. So you've known great success.
Well, that's what I thought success was. So yes, in that perspective, absolutely.
So the American dream always has a dollar sign associated with it.
Absolutely.
Even in Christianity, uh, you know, in the discussions that Jesus had, he was talking about the temple and the Pharisees. He says, "You give the best seat to the largest giver." Uh, you know, that was recognized as who the wealthiest in town was. We still do that. We have the Forbes 100 billionaires. We have all these listings and all these people who are worth all these fortunes, and what number they are and where they stack up on the list. And if you ask most people, tell me about yourself, they tell you what they do, okay, not who they are. All right? Because the identification in America especially is in what you do, not in who you are. So you went through a dark time in your life. Things changed. You actually contemplated suicide. You thought about ending this life, but things were so good. At least they had the appearance of so good. Well, what changed for you?
Well, that's like I said, just going back to that question of your success, it's everybody has a different definition of success, right? Especially when you're coming from another country and you're expecting to build all these things in the land of opportunity, in the promised land, I guess you could put it that way. And when you finally get to the peak of the mountain of what you think success was, you really look across the way and you realize that you just climbed the wrong mountain. So yes, on the outside, my life was great. We did build a very successful business in real estate. I've been in the financial services industry for the last 8 years, but the actual business was in real estate. So everybody looking from the outside thought that we had a perfect life. The challenge with that, and what most people didn't know about it, is that for the previous 8 years, I had been suffering with very deep depression. Very deep depression. I had been diagnosed depressed and with bipolar disorder and anything else you can possibly imagine. And I was on heavy medication, therapy sessions and seeing psychiatrists and all these things. And believe it or not, every other week, I can laugh about it now, but it's very, very sad when I look back. Every other week, I would see myself in front of a mental institution, wanted to check myself in. That's the level. That's how bad it was. Now, throughout the month, I would be able to function 2 weeks. And for the other 2 weeks, I would be inside the house, barely wanting to leave my room, with anxiety and depression and all these things. But people didn't see this. It wasn't just the business we had. We built a YouTube channel as well, and we had up to 80,000 subscribers within the first year. So imagine, we were doing something good and something that was successful, but there was no fulfillment at the end of the day, and that was the biggest challenge.
So what was, people often tell me, I don't feel well. And I say to them, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you.
Absolutely.
What was eating you?
Lack of purpose. Because it all changed back in 2016. Like I said, we grew up inside the church, but my view of God was very twisted. So as I grew up, I was taught that God was this mean, evil, not evil necessarily, but this mean person sitting up high that was just waiting for me to do something wrong so he could punish me. That's how I was, not because of my parents, but because of the environment that we were in. And so growing up, I didn't necessarily want anything to do with God, because who would want to have a relationship with somebody like that? So I was inside the church. We were there every Sunday, But on the back end, I was just doing things that nobody would ever imagine. It was just really sad to see. So in April of 2016, when you thought, when I had seen already what I thought success was, I finally got down on my knees at my house with no pastor, no church, no nothing. And I literally asked God to take my life, screaming from the top of my lungs and just saying, if you're not going to give me purpose, there's no reason for me to live. So success, sure, that's what I thought success was up until that point. But there was no fulfillment whatsoever. There was no sense of purpose. And that was the biggest aha moment that I had at that moment. And that's when things really started changing.
So you found yourself in despair. You found yourself at the end of you, which is really where God wants us to get to, not through difficulties, not necessarily through tragedy, not necessarily through mental illness or deep depression, but God does want us to consciously come to the end of ourselves so that we can grab a hold of Him and begin again. He will turn your mourning into dancing if you allow Him. In your introduction, you say you want to help readers keep from climbing the wrong mountain in life. You hear these stories of people who have climbed to this summit or to that summit, or the list of people that have climbed Himalayan to the top of the Himalayas, Mount Everest. And I always wondered to myself, why do you want to go to a place that no life can survive? The air is unbreathable. Nothing grows there. Nothing lives there. Why do you want to go to a place when life is in the valley? Life doesn't exist on the mountaintop. But we've been kind of sold this bill of goods that says that we need to have these mountaintop experiences. And I've always thought to myself, the Bible doesn't tell me that. It tells me that the valley is lush and green and is flowing with water, and the lowest place on earth is the Dead Sea. But right by the Dead Sea is this beautiful oasis, a wonderful respite called En-Gedi, which is where David hid out in the caves there, but it's flowing water and the ibex are there, and it's just a beautiful oasis there, right there near the lowest part, and that's in the valley, not at the mountaintop. At the mountaintop, nothing exists. So what is it that you're trying to keep the reader, what mountain is the wrong mountain, and what mountain should they be seeking?
See, I believe that there's a reason that everybody keeps trying to find or seeking the top of the mountain. That's why they're trying to always outperform everybody else. They're always trying to achieve something because it seems like they're always trying to prove something, right? And this obviously goes back to the way you were brought up. And maybe your parents were just very demanding. Maybe your teachers were very demanding, and they needed to make sure that you were proving yourself and doing all these things. And that's how I lived most of my life. And one time I actually asked my father, I said, Dad, I don't know why I have this strong feeling that I have to prove myself. And I'm asking you now, have you ever pushed myself very hard when I was younger, and to be able to prove something? He said no. So all my life I kept trying to understand what was going on within me, that I always had this feeling of needed to just prove myself constantly. There were no moments of victory, by the way, and that's the biggest challenge, because it doesn't matter how much you achieve. When you're in that mindset, it's never enough. So when I say climbing the wrong mountain, I believe in a couple of very simple things. I believe we were all created uniquely. That's the reason why you can't find another fingerprint anywhere in the world, like mine, anywhere in the world.
Right.
So we're all created uniquely. So we're created for a purpose. We have a mission on this earth. That's the reason God gave us specific gifts and talents, so we could understand them, develop them, and then be able to help others, right? Love God above all things, and then love one another. Those are the two biggest commandments, the greatest commandments. But in order for you to understand why you were created, you have to understand who you are. And that's the biggest thing. You see, when I achieved all what I thought success was and what other people thought success was, I became what I had. That's the problem. So it's not that the things that I had were taken away. I still kept it, but I lost my. There was such a loss in when it comes to sense of identity. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what type of personality I had. I didn't know my temperament. I didn't know anything about myself. So how can I know what I was created to do if I don't know who I am? Now here's the challenge. I cannot find out who I am if I don't know who made me, right? I always talk about a blender. If you look at a blender, the blender is a very powerful thing. But if it's not blending, it's not doing what it was created to do. It could serve as something to store, something within in your pantry. It could be used to serve water, but it's never blending, which is what it was created to do. So if that blender had feelings, it would be very frustrated all its life. That's the whole purpose behind it. I think most people are living their lives frustrated because they're not living within their purpose. And that's the mountain that I'm talking about.
We look in the Bible at spiritual gifts, and I've often counseled people that if you are not operating in the gifts God has given you, for instance, let's say you have the gift of hospitality, but in your church, you're in the back room counting the offering. You're not out front greeting people. You're going to become pretty disenchanted with that church. You don't know why. You just all of a sudden you find issue with the pastor's message. You don't like the worship anymore. And you're searching for a new church, but it has nothing to do with the church. It has to do with you not being satisfied because you're not where you're supposed to be. You're not operating in your gift. Okay? So if I take you from the back room and I put you out front, and you're serving and you're interacting with people, it's the greatest church in the world, and that guy could be spewing heresy and they have no music at all, but you're flowing in your gift. You're very satisfied and very joyful, and you're telling everybody what a wonderful church it is, right? Because we're so self-identified that we're kind of cut off from the external, and it's all how we relate to it's us as the nucleus, where we think that the world revolves around us. You obviously weren't flowing in your gifts because you didn't know anything about yourself, the Creator, and what He created you to do, and what gifts He gave you so that you could find joy, contentment, peace, love, understanding, shalom, that peace that passes all understanding. You can't have any of that if you're operating in this darkness of the unknown. Does that describe where you were in this pit of despair, this darkness of unknown, no reflection of yourself in the mirror because there was nothing there, because you couldn't perceive what was there?
Absolutely. And you're so empty at the end of the day that you're trying to fill the void that's within you with things. And that's the challenge. Things will never fill the void that God was meant to fill you with. There's just no other way. So I think there's a great movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's called The Giver. And I think it's a beautiful movie exactly because of this, what you just talked about. They watch over the kids until they're about 17 years old, I believe. So they're looking at they're studying their personalities and all these things, how they act and how they behave and how they say things. And then by the age of 17, I believe, they give them their assignment in life. Now, when they're given that assignment, they're extremely happy because that's what they were created to do. Now, somebody watched over them for 17 years before they actually got started. So in my mind, I wish we had a society that worked, not in every aspect, obviously, as the movie, but in that sense that, listen, let's watch over you for the next few years to understand who you are. And then that way we can understand what you were created to do. And that way you can play your role in society and impact the lives of so many. I keep wondering what the world would look like if every single person were acting in the position that they were created to act. I don't think there would be any thefts, any killing, no kidnapping, no nothing, like no wars, because every single person would wake up each day happy and excited about their lives, wanting to live and not really exist, because that's how most people are living. They're not living, they're existing. They're getting up on Monday mornings, dreading to go to work because they have to go do something they can't stand doing because of a paycheck, because they have to pay their bills. And then when Friday comes, they're excited because now they get to take 2 days off. I don't think that's the way God intended for us to live. I believe that we should be sad when Friday comes along and happy when Monday comes along, because we get to be in that where exactly where we were meant to be. That's how I think life should be lived.
You titled your book The Journey of a Kingsman. What is a kingsman?
So a kingsman to me is someone who lives for something higher than themselves, not because they're trying to become something so great in this world and trying to make a name for themselves. But kingsman is, in my view, it's humanity at the king's service. That's pretty much what it is. I believe that when you believe that you were created by a superior being for a specific reason, everything in your life changes, because every day when you wake up, you want to find a way to impact others using the gifts and talents that you were given. That's what being a kingsman is like. It's somebody that is not okay with existing or living a life of mediocrity. They want to live an abundant life, and whatever abundancy means to you. It's not necessarily money to most people, but maybe it's a great relationship. Maybe it's just bringing up your kids. Maybe it's doing something that impacts others. Maybe it's managing your time properly. Whatever abundance is or success means, that's what I believe a kingsman is somebody who lives for something more than themselves.
So in your book, you start out by talking about purpose. There's 12 quests, kind of challenges, journeys, individual journeys that you take us on through the book. And your first quest is purpose, finding out what you were created for. Now, what's interesting is that the one thing that everyone was created for was to worship God. That was the very first part of creation. He created the angels to worship him, and he created man to worship him. So one of the things that we don't do well is worship. I was challenged years ago by Pastor Jack Hayford. Had I instructed my congregation to know what their purpose was, which was what all men were created to do, men, women, mankind, were created to do, was to worship God. And did they know how? Did they understand some of the Hebrew concepts of worship, of using instruments or their voice or bowing down low in worship, and understanding the difference between praise and worship? And I took it as a personal challenge. And for 2 months, I did nothing but preach about worshiping God and how God lays out a pattern for worship. So our first purpose is a divine purpose, and that is to worship God. But you take us then through this process of gaining clarity, moving from submission to release. How do you do that?
Well, I believe that I'm a very analytical person, so that's my personality type, right? So everything has to make sense to me, and it has to have a certain order for me to be able to apply it. I believe that we worship God in everything that we do. Most people, and this is how I used to view it, is when you go to church and you're raising your hands and singing the song. But when they get home, their marriage is a mess, the relationship with the man is a mess, their work is a mess. So they're not really worshiping God in everything else. So my perspective of worship completely changed, in the last couple of years. Now, when we talk about purpose, and this is what I described in the book, this is my view and my perspective once again, that's why I make it very clear in the introduction, is I believe that we were created to have a vertical relationship with God, and we were also created to have relationship horizontally with one another, right? Love God above all things and love your neighbor as yourself. That's the sign of the cross as well, which is really cool. That's the general purpose, I believe. There's a specific purpose. When I talk about purpose, I'm talking about what you were put here on this earth to accomplish. And that's the challenge. because you can worship God and have the best relationship with everyone. But if you're still struggling every day, especially with what you're doing, because that's where you spend at least a third of your day, then you're never going to live a life full of fulfillment. So I believe there's a general purpose and there's a specific purpose as well. And a lot of people, yes, they're living out the general purpose, but they have no clue. They're not aware that there's a specific purpose. They go to work every day wondering if that's their suffering life, that's the cross they have to carry throughout their lives. I don't believe a single person should have to do work that they don't feel like doing. Not feel like, oh, I don't feel like going to work today. Because when you're living out your specific purpose, you want to do that 24/7. It's part of your life. And that's the reason I don't believe that personal life, business, or work and ministry are separate. I believe they're all one, because you have to be living what you're preaching. You see, throughout the years, what I saw a lot within the church, and obviously I'm talking about church and pastors because that's the environment I grew up in, is that there were good preachers, but they wouldn't do what they were preaching. And that really got to me, because I'm like, how could I hear someone? Nobody's perfect. Nobody will ever be perfect. But how could you be demanding something that you're not living yourself? So why not try to get aligned and understand not just the general purpose, but the specific purpose as well? Like I said, for you to do that, you have to know who you are, and then you have to know your creator, and then you'll eventually find that specific purpose. But it is a journey. That's the reason why I'm taking people on a journey that has 12 quests, because that's the other thing that most people don't understand. If you're not living a balanced life, and you're not working in every single area of your life, which are the 12 quests that I talk about, when you get to the end of your life, let's say you sacrificed all areas to build wealth, you will spend all your wealth to make sure that you get everything else back. But you won't be able to. You have no more time. That's the only thing that we can't get more of. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about the journey and the quest and everything else throughout the book.
Understood. We're talking with Diego Estevez, author of the new book, The Journey of a Kingsman, and the 12 Quests to Become the Person You Were Created to Be. This is your calling, not your vocation. But your vocation could be a part of your calling. That's
Absolutely.
where you'll find your fulfillment. And he takes you on 12 specific quests to obtain this, to arrive at a point of finding not complacency, not satisfaction, but true fulfillment in fulfilling your purpose that God created you for. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about the quest from purpose to spirit and our need for relationships, our need for redemption, and some of the other quests that will turn you into a kingsman. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The Teaching Archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, Prophecy in the News videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our one-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Diogo Estevez, author of the soon-to-be-released book, The Journey of a Kingsman, and the 12 Quests to Become the One You Were Created to Be. Diogo, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Diogo, we talked about this depression that you came out of, this lack of purpose, this great accomplishment of wealth and success measured by man, but feeling empty, unfulfilled, confused, despair, functional but dysfunctional, healthy but unhealthy, broken but whole, wealthy but bankrupt, all of these things going on that Paul actually writes about, 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 2 Corinthians 6:10. He actually describes that very person, that we are, that we are wealthy but poor. So there is this dichotomy of the natural versus the supernatural, the self-defined versus the God-defined, the man's vision versus God's vision. And your very first quest is the power of clarity. What does that do when you sharpen your focus?
Well, I think it changes everything. because most people are going through life deaf, dumb, and blind. That's the reality. I mean, you see them going to work every day or going to church or, relating to other people, and they don't have a clue of what they're doing. There is no clarity whatsoever. They don't have a plan, they don't have a strategy, they don't have absolutely anything to get to the next level, whatever that might mean for them. So I believe having clarity in life in every single area is probably one of the most powerful things you could ever have because it allows you to get to the next point you want and allows you to give that sense of accomplishment or fulfillment that you're looking for. And without clarity, you're just roaming through life. I always tell people that I believe that God created us to live a life by design. And if you're not living a life by design, you're living a life by default. But it's not God's default. God's plan is the design portion. Default meaning that you're living the world standards and you're being a part of someone else's design. Now, that's not the way I believe he intended for us to live. So having clarity and having this sense of awareness that life, the way most people are living their lives is not the correct way, is not the way that we were created to live. I think it's just incredible. And if you have that awareness, it'll completely change everything about your life.
In your book, you have 12 quests. What is for lack of a better word, what is the methodology of each quest? Is it the same process as you climb 12 different mountains, 12 different challenges you lay before us that you want us to grab a hold of? Is there a common process with each quest?
Well, I believe the common process, the common theme along each quest is that you have to be fulfilled in that specific area. So, I mean, if you're fulfilled with your work, but you still can't manage your time and you're struggling with time, and your excuse is that, and I say excuse because that's how I used to live as well, is that, oh, I'm just not good managing time. Nobody is great at managing time. This is something that you have to develop along the way. I'm great with my finances, but I'm not very good at relationships. That's what I used to say all the time. And the challenge is once you start telling yourself that lie over and over, you end up believing. So I think the common theme throughout the 12 quests is exactly that. But you first have to become aware that there are 12 quests. Now, I'm not saying these are the only ones. I'm saying from my perspective and from what I've experienced, I believe those are the 12 quests that make up your life. I just don't believe that unless you master each and every one of them. And when I say master, it's just coming to a place of fulfillment. It doesn't look the same to me as it looks to you. I'm an analytical person, so I have a schedule in every single little activity that I have. Yours might be different because you're different. But if at the end of the day, we could both say, we managed our time well today because we're able to accomplish and do these things, and perfect, we've done the job. So I didn't want to provide people with a recipe, and that's one of the reasons that throughout the book I say I'm not going to tell you what to think, but how to think, is because I think every single person that does this type of work, not every person, but most people, is trying to give you a recipe for success. And I make that very clear in the book that I don't believe anybody has a recipe for success because it's according to their blueprint. They have to give you questions that you can ask yourself, or maybe things that you can do to get to a certain spot to where you understand what success and fulfillment look like to you, but not tell you what success is, because it might not go well with your personality type or how you were designed. So that's the theme throughout the 12 quests. It's just being able to live a balanced life so you can get at the end of at the end of your life and be able to be fulfilled in every single area, ultimately.
So you talk about our spiritual quest, our need for relationships and our need for redemption. You then go into talking about the quest for the soul, which is mind, will, and emotion, kind of changing our perception of victim to victorious. How do you do that? Because there's a lot of people struggling with this victim mentality. They come by it honestly. Adam, when asked by God, "Where are you?" kind of blamed God first by saying, "Well, the woman that you gave me," so first he blames God, "the woman you gave me, she made me eat then he blames her, and then finally he says, the last thing he says is, and I ate. So he finally confesses to it, but only after blaming God for sending the woman and blaming the woman for tempting him. He finally takes responsibility for eating. So he was the criminal, but he painted himself as the victim by transferring the blame onto God first and then on the woman, long before he took responsibility for his own actions. How do we become victorious when we really feel like I'm not paranoid, they really are out to get me?
So I believe that the very first thing that needs to happen in everybody's life is there needs to be a super high level sense of awareness. That's the biggest thing. Because once you start, it's kind of like as if you're saying something, but there's something with outside of you that's examining this all the time. And it's saying, does this even make sense, what I just said, or, how I'm behaving and everything else as well? But, when growing up, I saw the Bible as this very, very hard book to read. This just thing, because I was like, the church, like, you have to read it, you have to do this, you have to do this. And then today I look at the Bible differently. I look at it as the book of wisdom that it actually is. So if it's a book of wisdom, I want to go back to the Bible and find out, okay, if I'm feeling like a victim, how do I feel like a victor? If I'm feeling down, how do I change that? If I can't do this, how can I make it better? So the entire book is based, if you think about it, it's based on Romans chapter 12. That's probably my favorite part of the Bible, just because it goes so in detail into the purpose subject and how we're supposed to behave and act and things like that. But one verse in particular is my favorite for sure, which is Romans 12:2. It says, don't copy the behavior. This is the NLT version. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think.
The renewing of the mind.
You gotta renew your mind. You have to be exposed to different things that you have never been exposed to before. My transformation started changing. It started happening when I started renewing my mind and changing. Now, there are multiple ways of doing this, but one of the things that I really learned is when we made the move from Orlando to Texas, when this whole story happened and this healing came into our lives, that was the biggest thing that happened, is I was starting to change the way I thought. If I had been stuck in the same mentality that I grew up in, thinking that, because at that point I was thinking, churches are all bad, pastors are all bad, I never want to get in touch with any of these people again. The one person that came into my life that mentored me like a father was a pastor. But here's the funny thing. He never preached at me. He never read verses with me. He built a relationship with me. But in order for this to happen, I had to change the way I was thinking. To me, that was the biggest aha moment throughout this whole process. So if I'm so stuck in the way that I've always been, and I'm not willing to look at other ways of doing it, how will I ever change? That's not renewing your mind, right? So that just made such a difference in my life. And that's the reason I'm so excited about sharing this with others. Now, this plays a role into every area of your life. You want to get better at your finances, what do you have to do? You have to be exposed to other people that have done well with their finances, not by doing something wrong, but by doing something good that got them to the spot that you want to be in. If you've been taught all your life that little things are bad when it comes to money, and you built a belief system, and it's not necessarily true. That's not how the people that have done well financially act and behave. But if you believe this and you're not open to changing that mind, to changing that perspective, you'll never achieve that level of fulfillment. And that goes for every single one of the other quests as well.
You move into this area of the quest for your body, the outer you. In a world where icons and how you look and this craze to have perfection and to focus on the flaws, and we're an overweight country, and there's so many different issues that people have with their self-image. They're so uncomfortable with who they want to look like, but they don't. So they live in this dissatisfied state. how do you approach that quest?
I stopped exposing my family to cable, and I'm saying cable TV just so you have an idea of what we've been through, because you're exposed to so much stuff that you have no control over. Most of the time, you're just flipping throughout the channels and looking at other people's lives and all the bad news that are going on in the world. So we haven't had cable TV in my house since 2008, I believe, just to give an idea. Now, it's not because we're legalistic because the church I grew up in, you couldn't have TV at the house. And so that's not the reason why we do it today. It's just because if I want to watch something, if I want to follow somebody, if I want to see their lives, I want it to have a specific purpose why I'm doing it. Why do I say this? Because that will keep me back from looking at other people's life that think they're perfect, and I'm not going to want to look like them because I'm not going to know what that looks like. So if I don't expose myself to that type of thing, then I'll never want to get to that point. Every single one of us are different. There is no way that one person is going to look exactly like the other. So if you come to that sense that, I want to find out who I am and how God made me, knowing that, because we're talking about the body chapter, knowing that if the Bible says that my body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, then should I treat that temple? Most of us are eating and not eating. Eating and not sleeping and not drinking water and doing these things because we're so busy and so caught up in our daily lives that we're damaging the very thing that's keeping us in this earth. It doesn't make any sense. So in the book, I give an example of a Ferrari, right? If somebody gave you a very expensive car today, how would you take care of that car? That car is valuable today, but 100 years from now, it will be 10 times more valuable only if you take care of it. So it's not that we're trying to do damage to our bodies or the people around us or our soul and our spirit, our mind and will and emotions. It's not that we're intentionally trying to mess it all up, but we have no instruction in a specific area. And if we don't know what we're doing, how will we ever do it right? Albert Einstein used to say that the definition of insanity is doing the things over and over and expecting a different result. If I don't look the way I want to look, what do I have to do? Let's be real here. I have to go talk to somebody that knows what they're doing that will help me get to the next level. Not so I can look like that guy. Maybe I'll look better. Maybe I won't look as big or as nice or anything like that. But if I want change, I have to find somebody, a mentor, or somebody that has proven results that will help me eventually get there. It's pretty simple.
So it's a very logical progression that you go from the outer you to mentorship that helps you frame things in relationship to the Word of God as opposed to the Word of man. And you begin through these various quests. We're now halfway through this journey now, and we come to the legacy building, the family. This is where they bear your name. And most people don't take the time to think about what we would call life is in the dash. In between the year you were born and the year you die, that's where life occurs. And yet that's the only thing that's inscribed on your headstone is a dash. That represents your whole legacy. How will you fill in that blank? If we see a dash on a screen, it's a blank that needs to be filled in. How do we fill that in? And this quest is really devoted to that family. So how do you approach your family differently via this quest than you had in the past?
Because I went through most of my life, and like I said, no, not because of somebody else's fault. This is just something that was going on within me, and for a long time I blamed other people. So what I was going through, I ended up hurting my family quite a bit, and obviously you can see it throughout the whole book. I'm being very open about everything that ever happened in my life, pretty much, because I wanted to help others bring healing to their lives as well. But legacy is so important to me because, like I said, I believe that God has placed each and every one of us in this world to do something more with our lives. Now, it's not, building a name or becoming famous or doing anything like that. There's nothing wrong with those things because those are just fruits. Same with being wealthy or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just fruits of who you are and now what you're doing because you're living God's purpose for your life. So leaving a legacy, I believe it's one of the most important things. And as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine challenged me, and we're in a group, a men's group that we meet on Fridays, and he challenged us and he said, go to the cemetery, go through the tombstones and tell me the types of legacy that you see there. And I took a picture and actually posted on my Instagram account as well, because the majority, I would say 95%, if not 97% of the tombs there had nothing written on it other than the date they were born, the day they died, and their name. And that was just extremely sad, because I'm like, what did you do with your life? What happened throughout this whole process? All this life that was given to you, all this time that was given to you in this world, you consumed all the resources. That's great. How did you give back? How did you impact others? Did you actually do something? Did you write a book? Did you write a song? Did you put together a seminar that helped somebody? Did you build a company? What did you do? It's not a matter of being better or worse, or a little or a big. What did you do? So this is one of the things that I challenge people is, what would you like people to say about you once you're gone? Not saying, look, this guy is just so incredible. No, what was the legacy that you left? Were you able to impact somebody's life? And was that legacy, is it a real legacy that's still impacting people long after you're gone? You know, looking back in the history and just looking at all these amazing people that have done so much for humanity. And you're like, why couldn't I be one of those? We keep getting caught in this mindset that we're not good enough. That's the biggest challenge. Although that's just him, he's special. If you come to a sense that you understand that each and every one of us is special, every single one of us has gifts and talents that the other one does not have, it will completely change your life altogether, and it'll impact your family and everything around your life.
You have a message that you want to deliver to our audience, and we've got about 4 minutes left in this segment. So I'd like you to talk face to face to our audience and deliver that message straight from your heart of what you've written in The Journey of a Kingsman and the 12 Quests to become the one you were created to be. What is it you hope that happens to them once they've taken this journey with you?
See, I believe that we make life a lot more complicated than it actually has to be. Now, there's a very simple question that I often ask people, and I say, if you had unlimited resources today, I used to say unlimited time, but we don't have unlimited time. We have 24 hours. If you had unlimited resources today, what would you be doing with your life first thing in the morning? What would your day look like? I'm not just saying, going to the beach and just relaxing, because you'll get to a point where you're going to feel so empty that you're going to get lost. I've been there, done that, been there, done that. So I want you to imagine what your life would be like if you had unlimited resources and you could literally do anything you wanted with it. The only caveat is that you would have to do something that would impact somebody else's life. What would your life look like if you woke up each morning wanting to live and not exist? You're excited about jumping out of bed every morning. Life is beautiful, how it was intended to be. You're living a life by design. You're excited about spending time with your kids. You're excited about spending time with your spouse. You want to go to work. You want to love on people. If people do you harm, you don't take it into, oh my God, why would they do that? No, start wondering what that person must be going through that caused them to do what they just did to you. Start thinking about your thoughts. Start thinking about your actions. If we start living a life aware with a heightened sense of awareness, your life will change. Start believing that you were created uniquely by an almighty God that wants you to do something with your life that will touch someone else's life. So maybe that's at the grocery store when you're talking to the cashier. If nothing else, be nice to them. Ask them how they're doing. If you see that they're hurting, give them an encouraging message. Start living your life and treating others how they want to be treated, not how you would want to be treated, because you're different than everybody else. The other thing I would say is understand who you are. We have different types of personality. There are 4 major types of personality. Who are you? Why are you having such a challenge within your home and within your work, and you just keep banging heads with everybody else, and you don't understand why you just can't come to a sense of agreement? There's a reason that person is different than you. Stop trying to impose the way that you think things are into them. It's just real simple, but if nothing else, just understand that you are special, you are unique. There is something out there for you to do, for you to fulfill. There is a greater life waiting for you, but you have to be intentional about that life. If you're going to keep living life the way you've been living up until now, which you're really just existing, you're never going to find the true sense of fulfillment and happiness that you've been looking for all your life.
It's a great message, Diogo. We've been talking with Diogo Estevez, author of The Journey of a Kingsman and the 12 Quests to Become the One You Were Created to Be. 12 quests, challenges laid before you, mountains for you to climb, that when you've accomplished each one of these, you'll find out the you were created to be. Diogo Estevez, thank you so much for being with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.